For those of you who don't already know, I've been slowly uploading a realistic career mode save to this channel, and in today's video I'll be sharing some of my tips on how I keep my career mode realistic and hopefully help you guys, if you're interested in that kind of thing, to keep yours realistic too. I'll try to give some brief examples of every single idea on this list to help show you how you can implement it on your saves. Because it's a team I know quite a lot about, I am a Nottingham Forest fan and have been for over 20 years, I do know quite a bit more about my team than most of you will if you've just picked up a random career mode save. This is quite important but not a necessary step to keep a save realistic. Every single tip in this video can be applied to either your favourite club, a random road to glory save, or anywhere in between. One of the most important parts of any career mode or any football team, of course, is the squad, and it's important to make sure that this is kept realistic. Of course, this is mainly managed by buying and selling players, and this makes it one of the most important areas for you to be strict with if you want to keep your save a bit more realistic. I've been looking at old transfer targets, looking for players with links to Nottingham Forest or Nottinghamshire, looking for the types of clubs that Forest are linked to in real life, and of course putting some of my own bias in there with players that I'd like to see at the club. My first tip is around buying players. One of the easiest ways to keep this realistic is having a look on websites like whoscored.com and transfermarkt.com, which both list out the squad, their nationalities, and the clubs they were bought from. Of course, there's a lot more information that can also be used to make sure every single signing you make is believable and realistic on career mode, but having a look at these kind of things and then maybe trying to generalize if they're signing lots of tall players, lots of fast players, focus on signing that style of player in your career mode. If you want to keep it even more realistic, when signing a player, make sure you fully scout the player first. This will not only reveal, of course, the overall rating, but it might also reveal if a player might be too good for the league you're in, or maybe overpowered in a certain way, so you can avoid having to reload a save if you've signed a player in League 2 with 99 pace that can score 55 goals a season. An example of buying a player that might on the face of it seem quite unrealistic was signing Socrates from Olympiacos. Of course, people will know Socrates from playing in the Premier League, but he did move to Olympiacos a season or two ago. I know that the Olympiacos owner is the same as the Nottingham Forest owner, and there has been a lot of transfers between these two clubs in a similar way to Udinese and Watford, where it's a bit more well known. So signing a player that Forest needed to strengthen their defence from Olympiacos was realistic. I did fully scout him and see that his overall rating was higher than every single player in my squad, but I did look at his stats and he didn't seem like he would be particularly overpowered, because a lot of his overall rating was coming from having a high defensive positioning stat rather than having really good pace, stamina and strength. Because we're on the verge of the playoffs getting back to the Premier League, I do think a player of this class might be interested if he does want to try and rebuild his reputation in England, so I went ahead and signed him, and I would consider it a fairly realistic signing. Of course, it might be more realistic to just go for the player Forest signed in real life, Steve Cook from Bournemouth, but I thought he's not quite as good on FIFA, I'm not that interested in using him, and I do like the storyline aspect of a player rebuilding his reputation in England. Another area that's important to keep realistic is the youth academy, and this time, of course, it's one of the hardest things to do on FIFA Career Mode. Overpowered youth players can be really good. I had a homegrown talent called Carter Allen, who was higher rated than my starting team strikers. He appeared at 73 overall, whereas my best starting striker was only 71. I didn't want to instantly promote him and have a 16-year-old leading the line for a promotion-chasing team, something that I think's only really ever happened to Southampton when they had Theo Walcott at a similar level. It didn't seem realistic for this player to be in such an important position, so I promoted him a few months into the season. I made sure to start him initially in cup games to prove that he was better than my starting strikers, as would happen in real life, and then slowly have been giving him more and more minutes in the league, with 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, and then maybe half a match a couple of times as well. Because dynamic potential doesn't kick in until Season 2, I don't actually have to worry about this being lowered for the time being, but if you're doing something like this, make sure you are giving your young players at least 90 minutes in the Cup from Season 2 onwards. Otherwise, they might start to lose potential and then eventually not be as good as they probably should be. I've also sent my youth scouts to a couple of nations that I know Nottingham Forest do like to sign players from. Republic of Ireland have produced some of Forest's best players of all time, Martin O'Neill, Roy Keane and Andy Reid. So it was sensible for me to send a scout out to the Republic of Ireland. For your save, make sure you check where some of your club's biggest legends are from, because quite often there will be a theme of where they've either had a good generation of Scottish players maybe, or a good generation of French players in the case of Arsenal, or anywhere in between, where you can make sure you can send one youth scout out to try and find the next generation of these legends. The second scout I sent out went to England, because of course this is the nation where you can find Nottingham. I always recommend sending a scout to the home nation just because it keeps it a little bit more realistic, as 99% of your young players are going to be from the same region in the same nation as the club you're playing as. Finally, to keep the last scout even more realistic, have a quick look through a Wikipedia page, see if you can find who the owner is, where the owner's from, or someone on the board of directors, because quite often you will have foreign ownership, especially if you're playing in England. This is the case for Nottingham Forest, and I sent my last scouts out to Greece, because they have a link with the owner that I mentioned earlier, and have had a couple of good young Greek players coming through the academy, although none of them have really made it to the first team yet. Because of this, I gave them the worst possible scout, because one or two of these players might eventually make it through, and I did want to simulate getting a cool Greek name here and there. The final thing I've been doing to keep my save realistic is knowing which players to use. Of course, this is easy being a fan of the club you're playing as. I know that Gaetan Bong is never going to be a first team player. The fans don't like him anymore, and he definitely doesn't have the ability to start in the championship. If you're starting out as a club where you don't know too much about, have a quick look at fan forums, maybe search the club's hashtag on Twitter followed by a player's surname, and then you can have a good look at what people really think about them. Or maybe even go on transfer marks, as I mentioned earlier, and see if they've been starting a large percentage of matches recently. This gives you a good view of which players might get on. Maybe there's an argument between some of the players, so one of them's been left out. Maybe they're just not a big fan, maybe they've not been playing well recently. Either way, FIFA ratings are usually rated on the season before, so if you want to make your save a bit more realistic to how it's going this season, then do make sure you are playing a very similar team to how the team is playing in real life. So if you've got a player that's your highest rated player, but he hasn't played much in real life, maybe consider not starting him for the first couple of games of the season and see if you can get on with your second or third choice player. It gives it a bit more challenge, and honestly I think it keeps it a bit more realistic, and it gives you the chance to love the players that the fans love in real life, which gives you a bit of a closer attachment to the other fans in real life, and hopefully makes you enjoy your FIFA save a little bit more. Thank you all for watching this far. Hopefully you didn't get too annoyed by my voice. I have got a blocked nose because I'm in the very last couple of days of having COVID, so hopefully that's gone soon. Like the video if you enjoyed any of my tips. If you've got any of your own, comment them below, because me and everyone watching this video would love to hear what you have to say, and subscribe if you want to see more like this, and of course make sure you check out my career mode by looking at the playlist link in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you very soon for another video. Cheers and goodbye.